Football 360 show coming at you live on YouTube and X. And pick us up on the audio versions on Apple as well as Spotify.
Yep.
As
We're
well.
live on Twitter.
Yep, live on Twitter. That's what I just said.
Oh, yeah.
X.
Live on Twitter.
There
X. That's
you go.
right. There
thank
we
you,
go.
guest. Thank
there
you,
we
special
go.
in-studio guest.
Yes.
The old guys, they
Yeah,
call it.
Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it.
And you can catch reels, all kinds of reels on Instagram.
Yep.
As well
and
as
shorts on YouTube.
Yep, shorts on YouTube. I see those every once in a while.
Yeah, but Spotify, Apple are the main ones
for the audio.
For the audio, that's the ones that are probably the most downloaded.
And then if we've just messed it up enough to where you can't understand where to find us, football360show.com is the place to be.
Everything can be found there,
including last week's amazing interview with Brady Cook.
Yeah, a lot of good insight from him. Really good to hear him kind of get his perspective on where he's at today and where he came from and what he's doing moving forward.
The whole journey is just amazing. And special shout out today. We're going to be brought to you by KCVarsityCombines.com. KC Varsity Combines is making its inaugural debut here in St. Louis.
Yep.
May the 4th at Francis Howell High School. And, there's only 2 camp combine showcases that I endorse. One is Elite Combine every year, 16 years. I think we did our 16th year. And KC Varsity is the other one on the guys on the Kansas City side. Well, they're going to come over here, and you're going to see some familiar faces from Elite who are going to be there as well.
Yep.
And going forward, you're probably going to see more of that between Elite and KC Varsity Combine. KCVarsityCombines.com. You want to hit it. If you're a lineman, there's cool King of the Hill. You win yourself a belt, a strap. I know, guess you would have liked that back in the day. And there's going to be 1-on-1 and 7-on-7 besides the usual. It's not just testing. And this is something we talk about, because I had a young man who wants to come really bad to the KC Varsity Combine on May 4th, but mom says he can't do anything till after his sophomore year. Huh. Well, that's not the time you can't just turn it on like that. And we've spoken about that.
I think that's a bad move. I mean, especially when you're younger, you at least get the experience of doing it, right? Yes. Because before you know it, you will be a sophomore, junior, rising junior, rising senior, and having that experience is definitely worthwhile.
It really is. And it's more than just testing. A lot of people think, oh, well, we're just going to go and they're going to test our. No, you learned a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of teaching, a lot of coaching that goes into this. And especially primarily with Elite and with KC Varsity, which is why those are the only 2 that I endorse. I know there's a lot of pop-up camps. Man, I'm seeing somebody who's they're just shooting it out there to everybody, man.
Yeah.
Just throwing that big wide net. And there are other places who do it, and they're doing it because they want to, make the money, and then they want to sell you a subscription so you can read about what you did at their place. And, that's all well and good, but
yeah, I've never been a fan of that. Only because, at the end of the day, if someone does something newsworthy and it needs to get out there, if you're in it to help the kids, I think getting it out there to them, to the colleges and getting it out, on social media for them is really a positive thing.
Absolutely, but like I said, Elite has been doing it for 16 years. KC Varsity for 12, 13 years. Both professionally run, reputable places.
Yep.
Just top of the line, and so this is going to be really cool. Go to KCVarsityCombines.com and check it out. Somebody who took a different path, an unusual path, came along a little bit later is our next guest,
Yep.
Mr. Michael Neese, formerly SLU Junior Billiken, right?
Yep.
Michael, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Well, your story is unique, right? We had Brady Cook on last week, who had a real traditional, started junior football, kind of had the, not that you started knowing that you're going to end up going to be a college quarterback, but that's kind of the dream, if you will.
Yeah.
And the pathway kind of worked out nicely for him, right? So, a little bit about yourself. I think we're going to talk today and kind of give, because I think it's such a unique story. We've referenced you on the show a number of times. Yes. But really, you're in the NFL now, right? So you're with the Detroit Lions, and you've been now. You're entering year 3, going into this offseason, which starts next week for you guys, correct?
Correct. Yep.
So if you would just kind of give us a little bit of your background, so where you're from, what sport you played when you were younger, and then we'll kind of go through the journey of where you are
It's
today.
going to be like, this is your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Football.
so
Football.
I grew up in Chesterfield. I had two older brothers and an older sister. Both my older brothers went to SLU High, so that's kind of naturally where I went. None of my older brothers played football per se, but I was always really interested in football and kind of what it took because I saw it on TV. My dad went to Notre Dame, and I was always like a big Notre Dame football fan, watching every weekend in the fall. And I think that kind of like started my love for football, I think. And then in sixth through eighth grade, my parents let me play football for the first time. I think that was a great experience. I played for the Chesterfield Bears back in the day.
Who was your coach on that team?
Demetrius Brown.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And our team wasn't that good, but I had a whole lot of fun.
That was during the heyday of youth football. Like,
Yeah.
let's call it West St. Louis County at that time.
Yeah, that really
was a
dominated.
really good
Chesterfield
program,
Bears,
had
yep.
quality fields, quality organization, and a really like good game day experience. I think I remember that being kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're a little guy, you're playing there, you're having
Yeah.
a good time, and enjoying it. And again, I think it's really important to know you just said, hey, we weren't really winning that much. At that age, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things?
Right. And what you said was really important. At that age, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But you know what? We had 20 guys on our team, and guess what? I played both offense and defense. I played offensive line for some of the time. I played quarterback eventually by the end of my like grade school era. And I always played defensive end or linebacker or something. So I learned the game from like all perspectives, both offense and defense.
So you mean learning different positions at a young age is not a bad thing?
No.
I think we could fall into the trap of everybody wants to specialize. And yeah, there are certain kids that do specialize that I've been around, but the vast majority have no idea. Like I always tell people when they first come in with their kids in elementary age or middle school age, if they haven't played, is what position do they identify with? Because I think everybody some way, shape, or form identifies with the position when they first start becoming a fan of the game or interested. And so a lot of kids are looking at like, I want to be a quarterback. Well, some guys do that and then realize like, hey, this is way too much work. I don't like doing this. Other guys, shy away. Like we have big guys that'll come and say, no, I want to be a running back or I want to be a receiver. And then eventually, the big kids end up wanting. It's very rare that a kid wants to be a lineman, right?
Yeah.
Defensive lineman, different story. Offensive lineman is a tough sell sometimes.
Yeah, usually grade school and high school, you have to tell kids they're on the offensive line.
Yeah, right. Yeah, 100%. So your experience in youth football was a solid, a good experience, enjoyed it. And then it's time to go to high school. So of course, it sounds like SLU was a no-brainer.
Yep. So I went to SLU and I tried out for the freshman team my first year and made it. I actually tried out for quarterback because I wanted to play quarterback at the time, but eventually the coaches there said, no, you look like an offensive lineman. You might not know it right now, but you're an offensive lineman. So
good coaches though can see that, right? And I know sometimes it's hard for the kids because you probably had your dreams dashed a bit. Like, hey, you're over here with the quarterbacks. There's probably 5 kids trying out or 8 kids trying for quarterback, and then you have your line group where everybody's kind of trying not to be, right? And they say, hey, no, you're going to be one of these guys. And I think, sometimes look, offensive line is the only position that if you don't have it, it ain't happening, right? I mean, you need the offensive line because it's just the heart of the game. Really, it really is. It sets the tone of the game. So, were you disappointed you didn't get to play quarterback?
I was disappointed, but I kind of understood. Yeah. There was other guys that could throw the football way better than me.
Who was the quarterback in your age?
Guy, we had a number of different dudes, but no one was really a standout. We had Mitch Batchelett.
Yep.
He was our varsity quarterback.
Yep. Remember Mitch, we trained him quite a bit.
Yeah. He was a good player.
Yeah, really good player.
Definitely threw the ball better than me. So
so they move you over to block for him. So how did your career go at SLU?
It was up and down. I think as a freshman, I came in, I was probably 6'1", 170 pounds. So, I mean, that's good enough to play offensive line for the freshman team, but, that's not like there's very few like kids that are physically developed to play offensive line from that young of an age. So usually, it's people that don't look the part. And I would say I didn't look the part. But I started playing it. And then my sophomore year, I actually got bumped up to varsity. And I played defensive end for 2 years, sophomore and junior year.
So how was your growth between freshman year and sophomore size wise? Did you grow a lot between that?
Yeah, I would say I steadily put on about 20 pounds every year.
Nice.
And I think I was 240 by the end of my senior year. So I did a lot of maturing throughout my like college career or high school career. I mean, and I think maybe that's one of the things that college scouts like overlook the most is you look at some kid who's 16 years old and you try to project what they're going to be when they're 22 years old.
Correct.
And, they get it wrong all the time.
Yeah.
They miss. So because that's the tough thing is they're looking for the easy fix is, oh, that kid already weighs 285.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the problem is that a good 285? Did the guy gain that weight too fast? Has he reached the top of his potential, so to speak? I think that's on skill sets as well. But yeah, it's really tough to see because they are looking for ready-made product.
I was gonna say they want instant ready-made plug
100%.
in and play guys. They don't look anymore. Even back then, they didn't look for the guys and see project, right? Coaching staffs, and this is no knock on coaching staffs, but their evaluation process, they're evaluating so many different guys that they don't want to take some guy who's like, well, he's 6'8", he's 240. He could develop into this. It's rare nowadays that they really want to do that.
Well, yeah, you talk about there's the Dalton Demos of the world. He was 6'5", so everybody wants the height.
Yeah,
but then he's too thin, right? Because you can say what you want about anybody. You can say, oh,
he's too thin. His hands are too small.
Yeah, his hands are small. He doesn't move fast.
Yes. Yeah.
All those things. But at the end of the day, I think there are so many variables. But being a lineman, not let's say in that size range, right? Because like a 240 on the defensive lines, they'll take it.
Yep.
Right. Offensive line, we need you closer to 280, 300.
Right. And so it's gotten to a point to where now your average Battlehawks fan can pick out guys because everybody can see the ready-made guys versus the developmental guys.
Correct. So
yeah,
high school career, how did it go?
So like my sophomore, junior year, I played mostly defensive end. And defense because we had guys like Joe Mattingly, Christian Stewart, Max Cavey.
Oh yeah,
like we had really good offensive linemen to play all those positions. So really, I didn't have a home there for those years in high school. And so if I wanted to play, I wanted to play defense because that's where I could get on the field. But then between junior and senior year, we lost a lot of those guys because like Max and Christian were a year older than guys like me and Joe. So Coach Kornfeld said, hey, if you're going to play offensive line. And that was hard for me to accept at the time because I really wanted to play defense.
Because you've been playing defense.
I was telling college coaches, hey, I play defensive end. And now he's telling me you're not going to play defensive end. You're going to play right tackle. So that was actually really hard for me. And I told him no at first. And he said, well, if the answer is no, then you're not going to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
and he's old school. Like
he was old school like
that's just
that.
the way it is. So,
but he likes to take credit for the fact that he really saw me as an offensive lineman and switched me over.
Yeah.
But
so how did you get your mind right to where you finally accepted it? Besides just, well, I want to play. Because a lot of kids, they tell me all the time, no, I'm this.
I took a 1,000-foot view and I looked at it and I thought, you know what, we really do need somebody. I was a captain of the team. If I'm not going to play right tackle, whoever's going to play right tackle is going to do a way worse job than I'm going to do, even though I don't really know anything about offensive line as much because I haven't been playing that. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to take it for the team. I'm going to do this because we're going to be so much better. We'll win if I do this. And then I know the people behind me at defensive end, I don't think they're as good as me. I think they're going to get pushed around.
Yeah.
And then I predict within a few games, I'll be playing both sides 100% of the time. And I was right about that.
Well, so that's it. Part of it is you give coach what he needs, right?
Yeah.
And then he'll help you do what you want to do, right? And I think there's a give and a take. And I think managing your relationship with your coach and seeing it through their eyes sometimes is a lot harder for young athletes, and sometimes it's really hard for parents,
Yeah.
right? Because they're viewing it as, well, this is going to be detrimental to Johnny's career and all of that. So, so you go through in that time. I know we used to see you in the facility. You would come in. I would say that you were a guy that wasn't like a gym rat, but you were certainly coming in and doing some training throughout that time. What was your experience as a high schooler doing some training coming in?
I think as a high school kid, I was like interested, and I loved the game and I loved playing, but I don't think I was fully like committed as some other guys were, like Joe Mattingly, who came to Elite every Sunday.
Yeah.
And I really wasn't that guy. Like I came in a few times, and really, like my dad wanted to push me. He really wanted to push me to come in more and more. And I really didn't follow through on that. I had other stuff going on. I liked basketball. I played water polo. SLU is a hard academic school.
Yeah.
I had lots of school stuff going on. I had friends. There's a lot of stuff going on. And, I don't know if I had quite found my like love for the game at that stage. I think if like my dad or other people would have pushed me hard, like too hard to do that, I would have hated it. And like I'd have kind of gone the opposite way.
Yeah.
And like, I did like the game. I loved Friday nights, but senior year came around, and it's not like people are offering me scholarships and stuff like that. And I wasn't really like, I wouldn't say all that motivated to come in and work at it, because I didn't think there was a shot that I was ever going to even go to the college level to play.
Which Joe Mattingly, your teammate, ended up going to Holy Cross, correct? What did he? Do you remember what he weighed senior year?
He was probably 280.
Yeah, so that's some of that, and he had some pretty good recruiting, interest and action. So so you're kind of in your mind, and I would say 95% of all kids playing high school football are kind of in that, hey, I'm just playing football. I love the game. It's fun. I'm at my school. Someone asked me to play, or my buddies are playing, and I really am a fan of the game. But it kind of stops right there. Yeah. And then there's that 5%-ish right in that range that absolutely love the game, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones, and in there, there's a subset of guys that are probably being pushed, right, by an outside force, whether it be a coach or a parent, that's forcing them to kind of live. And I've seen that quite a few times, where the parents really pushing it, and then the kid ends up getting to the point where they're done. It's all done. They're out. So, but that 5% core group of guys that absolutely love it, are willing to do whatever they can to do it, sometimes is because they've gotten adulation. Someone's kind of let them know, like, hey, you're going to be able to play college football, right? There's an end in sight here. You're going to reach that goal of being a college football player, and you're going to get a scholarship. So, if you don't have that, but you have athleticism, you have that, there's things you're talking about. There's threads of your story that start to make more sense, because let's not gloss over, you're playing water polo.
Yeah, how's
Very
that translate?
difficult
Yeah,
game.
how's that translate to football? That's you don't hear of a lot of football / water polo players.
Yeah, that's a weird combo. So I played football in the fall and then water polo in the spring. And water polo is actually way tougher than football is from an endurance perspective, like your core strength, your leg strength. That's probably why I played both sides of the ball, and my senior year, was because I had such great endurance from that sport.
Interesting.
But I think a lot of hand-eye coordination. I think a lot of competition.
It's a rough sport.
different.
So
yeah.
So it's a workout.
It's physical. It's really physical. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of components to that sport that like lent itself to like developing me as a football player, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah. So you senior year kind of goes. You have other guys, the class ahead of you, they got a class below you, guys that are like going to college to play football. Some of which are in the NFL now, right? Isom and you had Tony Adams, who we had on, and then BJ Wilson is another guy. So where were you at with that?
Yeah. So in my mind, like, I knew I was a great football player. I knew the kind of runway I had, but I didn't really feel like anyone really believed in me. Like I didn't see an end there. Like so it's tough. It's tough to believe in yourself when nobody else believes in you and nobody else is patting you on the shoulder, telling you, "Hey, you're so great. You're so great." But really, like, because of that, and then what ended up happening, that made me, the kind of player I was going to become, because I had to push through all that.
So how do you decide where you're going to go to school? What's the thought process?
I had some interest from like some really small schools to come play football, and like coaches calling to recruit me and stuff. But, I didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't really want to take that path and go to a small school of a few thousand people. I was pretty smart. My older brother had gone to Dayton in Ohio, and done ROTC there. And that's kind of where all my family's from, is from Ohio. And they have a great engineering program, and they accepted me, and like, it was just a good fit for me, like academically and stuff. And that's what I kind of thought I wanted to do. And then as well, they had an FCS football team, and that kind of like also stood out to me. Like, hey, they have an FCS non-scholarship team. Like, that seems like something that like could be up my alley, given like how I'm viewed by coaches and like where I am like physically right now, like 240 pounds. That all kind of like stood out to me. And for whatever reason, that's the path I chose, for academics, family, and then like football. But really at the time, they didn't even have a football spot for me. It's a non-scholarship school, like I was saying. So they have like spots, not scholarships to give away. But what ends up happening at schools like that is that spots open up as people quit, because you're not tied to the school because of like the financial scholarship you get from football. So if you go and then you decide, football is maybe not for you, then you leave the team, and there's no repercussion for that.
Yeah,
you
you're
still
not
have your
worried about your
academic scholarship
scholarship
and stuff like that. Yeah. So I ended up meeting a coach from there, Austin King. He was the offensive line coach, and he recruited the St. Louis area. Great coach. He played in the NFL for 5 years. Kind of connected with him, and something about all that kind of stood out to me. And I kind of knew that I would get a shot to play there because spots would open up. So I just kind of reached out to him, let him know, said, "Hey, I'm coming here for school. Let me know if something opens up."
So you went blind, essentially.
Yeah.
Like a blind faith.
Yeah.
Said, "Hey, if it works, it works. Great. I'm going to school there. I'm going to be an engineer."
Yeah.
Did you feel like you had something to prove, or you had nothing to lose?
A little bit of both.
I was gonna say,
And to be honest, like I remember calling Coach King in April, May of my senior year, and talking to him and like letting him know, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. Like, remember me, reach out to me if you need somebody." And then I didn't hear from him until in August, 3 days before their camp started.
I mean,
nice.
So
I went all summer.
How do you?
So I kind of went all summer, and like the longer things went, and the longer it went, that like I never heard from him. I just kind of brushed off. I blew it off. I didn't really, July, August of my, senior, going into freshman year of college, football wasn't really even top of my mind, I would say.
Yeah, so you're not running around telling people I'm going to Dayton to play football.
No,
right? Like
no.
You're going to Dayton to go to school, and
and
so you're probably not training like as if you're like getting ready to go.
So I wasn't. Yeah, exactly. I wasn't really training. I was actually working on a golf course at the time. I was doing groundskeeping stuff at Meadowbrook.
Mm-hmm.
So I was outside in the sun all summer, which was great. Like I was in shape, but I was also losing weight. I was probably 220.
Oh boy.
That was hard work. That was 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day. So I got lost kind of in that. And I really wasn't thinking football at that point until I got the call in August.
Right when camp started.
And I was like, you know what? I do love sports. Like, why not do this?
So you end up going in, you're clearly not in the shape that you want to be, right?
So I'm not in the shape I would have been in if I would have known that this was going to happen.
So you were kind of back in your Chesterfield Bears days. That sounds like fun.
Yeah,
I'll do it. Yeah, sounds like fun.
Let's try it.
Yeah.
So you go into camp. It was a 220, 230 pound, freshman, which is a shock to anybody's system anyway. It does not matter whether you prepared, you didn't prepare. It does not matter. Making the jump from high school to college is no joke. Like
Mhm.
it is a serious jump.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, FCS non-scholarship. No, there are guys
Yeah.
there. There are dudes that can play football there, and every single team's got him, right?
Yep.
It's just a matter of what concentration that each team has of them.
Yes.
Yep. So yeah, you're exactly right. So freshman year was really a struggle. Like I was kind of looked at like, who the hell is this guy? Like, are you sure you want him to play offensive line for us? Like, what the heck's this guy going to do for us? You know, like even the guys kind of my age were like kind of shied away from me because, you know, they all knew each other beforehand too. Like they were, you know, training for it.
Yeah.
They were, you know, probably better than me at the time, you know, because I wasn't planning for it. And we had a guy there. He was a 5th-year senior. His name was Shane Tobe. And his dad is actually Dave Tobe, the Kansas City
He was my
special
strength
teams
coach in college. I never knew that. Yeah.
So he has a son, Shane, and he played at Dayton. He was a 5th-year senior when I was a freshman.
Small world.
And he was a great player. You know, I would say he's like the prototypical like FCS non-scholarship player. Like he didn't have the physical tools. He wasn't super athletic, but he had, you know, so much grit and like he knew the game and he played hard.
But
And he played the right way. And he was
I was
really-
going to say, yeah.
He was really strong. I think he
Yeah.
broke the bench press record. Like
Yeah, so his
500
dad
pounds.
was just a
Surprise.
side note. When I was in
Yeah.
college at Mizzou, he's now special teams coach for the Chiefs, but he was the national strength training coach of the year in 96 or 97 that season. And he had a couple guys like when I say like powerlifting, we had some strong dudes. He was we had a guy squat 1,000 pounds. 1,000 pounds. Strength, Muscle, and Strength magazine was there to even watch it. It was pretty wild. But the strength, Brock Olivo. I saw a kid the other day made a big deal about a guy squatting like 550 pounds as a freshman, and Brock Olivo came in and squatted 780 as a freshman. He's now on the coaching staff at Mizzou.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did not know that.
Yeah.
So he gives you. So he's your kind of your mentor,
So he was-
if you will.
Well, so there's more to that story. So during training camp, about 2 weeks in, I'm lost. I'm probably not even doing great. Shane Tobe gave me such a terrible concussion, knocked me out for a few weeks, which that probably saved me because if I had to keep going, I probably would have quit myself. But because of that, I made it through the training camp and I was into the season. And then it was back to, you know, playing football and being on scout team and learning. And that was tough, but like I went through this kind of struggle that year, and I would say like I'd talk to my parents and I'd be like, I kind of want to quit, like this and that. This is tough, and it was. But my dad said, just give it a year, get through it. If at the end of the spring you want to quit, then you can do that. But I think if you put your mind to it, if you put the time in, you'll start to enjoy it more as you get over this hump.
So going back in time, like that freshman year, we always tell kids when they first get to college, it does not matter full ride, not full ride, any of that. We tell them, listen, you're going to get to a point where you look at yourself in the mirror and say, what in the hell did I get myself into?
Yep.
Right. And everybody else, you have to understand though, everybody else is thinking the same thing. They're caught, they're away from home. It's a new experience. They're not the big man on campus anymore. They are definitely, you know, down low. And there's guys that know how to do it better than they know how to do it.
Yeah.
So the toughest thing is that the situation becomes really, really difficult for athletes to overcome all of the issues that they're gonna see and not be in their safety net for the first time in their life and be in the nest of their house, right?
Right.
So you survived that, and you maybe think of that as that you when you said you had the concussion, that it saved you, because oftentimes it's something like that actually because let's be honest, there's a lot of doubt.
Yeah,
there's a ton of doubt in people's minds when it comes to playing at that level, a ton.
Yeah, and clearly I was good enough, but
yeah,
like as you look years out, but like that is a tough period of time when you're 18 years old, you're the top of the food chain where you come from, and you come in, you got guys like Shane Tobe that we were talking about, and that's a whole new level that you've never seen before.
Yeah. A
and-
confident man playing the
yeah.
position that you want to play.
Yes.
And you, I mean,
that's
you
a shock
see,
to the system. That's
Yes.
hard. That's hard to accept,
yeah.
like
You-
in your mind, in your ego, or whatever.
and I'm sure you've seen guys who just drop by the wayside. I'm talking about big name guys who were heavily recruited, who
Fold.
just can't take it. They can't take that pressure. They can't take the Shane Tobes beating them up every day in practice and getting on their case and ribbing them and so they quit.
Yep, it happens all the time. Or they, nowadays, what do? They transfer,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Before they would quit, now they transfer, or they try to transfer and someone tells a story about them and then they have nowhere to go.
Right.
So that happens all the time as well.
Like
So
thousands of other guys.
Yeah,
Nowhere
so-
to go now.
you survive freshman year. What happens after
Yeah.
that?
So, yeah, I would say freshman to sophomore year, it was all about body, like the physical development for me specifically. Like, how do I get myself to being the physical component of what an offensive lineman needs to be in the FCS?
Yep.
Strength training, speed training, and then something that people don't really focus on so much. You can lift and run as much as you want, but it's all about body mechanics when it comes to offensive line and technique. That's way more important than how much you can squat or bench. Your functional strength.
Yes.
It's great that you do all this working out, but like, do you push off the foot the right way? You're stepping under yourself. Like, all that is way more important. And the coach I had at Dayton was the right person for me. And he really emphasized stuff like that as opposed to just the strength training. Because he'd played in the NFL for 5 years and he kind of understood that. And so from a physical and then a technique standpoint, I took many steps forward. And it's really kind of shocking, like how fast something can happen, how fast you can improve when you're that young.
Yep.
And I would consider a freshman in college still very young.
Oh yeah.
Especially learning the game, because now your brain's at a point where you can actually acquire that skill, right, over time. So yeah, you're getting strong and all that stuff. To your point, like, so many athletes and coaches falsely misinterpret bench press scores, squat poundage, all those maxes. They misinterpret that and say, hey, and sometimes they misinterpret size, right, for the ability to actually do something. Yes, there are certain barriers you have to clear, but there's a reason why the fastest guys at the NFL Combine every year are not the guys that are perennial all pros.
Yeah.
There's also, there's a way to move fast inside the game if your brain moves fast, not just necessarily your body moving fast, right? I always say, like, if you move really fast and don't know where you're going, you get out of position more quickly, right? And that's a big issue in the game, is that as you learn the game should slow down for you, but your body mechanics should overtake and just become who you are on the field. And I think the guys, it sounds like you were in a scenario that was kind of the perfect scenario, and you fell into it to a degree because you didn't chase it. And I think that's what's so unique about your story, is because most people really, really, really want to force the situation to occur for them because they think that's what it's supposed to do. Everybody's story is unique. Everybody's got different things that happen to them, right? And some guys, it could be their career ends because they get hurt. You just don't know what your story is going to be, but you got to stay in the game, and that's the moral of the story. So, as you start to get better, what happens after that? As you start to climb a little bit.
Yeah. So I would say sophomore through senior year, I took so many steps forward in my physical and technical development that I kind of surpassed some people. Maybe in high school, these people were so far ahead of me, but I'd close that gap and maybe overcome that with some other people. Yeah. So, but at that point, I still wasn't really where I needed to be. I think my senior year at Dayton, I was still 275 pounds. I wasn't, fully developed yet. And really at the end of my career there, I was thinking about getting a real job. like after graduation. But the coach I had, Coach King, he said, why don't you put your name in the transfer portal, and somebody will give you a scholarship because you are a good player. You're all conference. You're this and that. Why wouldn't you put your name out there, get a scholarship, keep playing? So that's what I did. I put my name out there, and then Temple University in Philly offered me a scholarship. So I kept going and took the next step forward and went there.
So your senior year at Dayton, you were 275 pounds. What were some of your testing numbers?
I was as strong as I could have been. I think power clean 350. So I was explosive. I was strong. I don't think I had a very high body fat percentage, which is why I didn't have the weight. I was probably 9-10% body fat. So some coaches, like, they saw that and they saw me like Temple, and they thought, well, like, we can get him to 15-16% body fat and he'll be 300.
Yeah.
So were like your testing numbers, your 40 vertical jump or anything like that? What were those? Do you remember?
Yeah. Bench press, I probably was 350. Squat, I had to be close to 500. I don't remember quite a 40 time, but I would say in the 5-second range.
Which is moving.
Yeah, that's
moving
moving.
for a
Yeah.
big guy.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So you go to Temple. What's the experience? What's the jump from FCS non-scholarship to FBS scholarship?
I think that was a big jump. That was a big difference. At the FCS level, non-scholarship, guys were either big or fast.
Yep.
And the FBS level with scholarships, they were usually both.
Mm-hmm.
They had the size and the speed. So defensive linemen, front seven especially, I think that's a huge difference. That was definitely something like shocking to me when I first got there. Was like, this guy's 300 pounds and he moves
Right.
well.
He's like a running back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a running back.
So
at
what-
Tackles.
What was your pathway to the field though? Was it pretty crowded? Did you beat people out, and what was the process like there? Because you're starting all over again.
Right.
You got 1 year left.
Right. So I came in and they put me second string guard, which I think was a fair spot to put me based on who they had. And about 5-6 practices into their training camp in 2020, they said, hey, we're actually going to move you to right tackle with the first team. And so I moved over to right tackle for whatever reason. They thought I was the best pass blocker they had, which was probably true. And so they actually moved me out to right tackle. And that was a new position for me. I'd never played before, but I learned it pretty quickly, and it was actually pretty natural. It was I played guard at Dayton and then tackle at Temple, which kind of mirrored kind of what I did in high school, actually, because I played tackle at SLU.
Mm-hmm.
So I had some experience. I just hadn't played in 5 years, and this is a whole different level. So
between you starting at Dayton and not training and just last minute call up to arriving at Temple, how did your training differ, and how did that build?
Training as in what?
Just to develop yourself as a player, or did the coaches at Dayton develop you, or was it pretty much you needed to develop yourself, or a combination of the both?
Yeah, so I think it was both. It was technical and physical. And the way that I wouldn't say but my offensive line coach at Dayton, he set up a program where, like, all right, we're going to lift. You have your hour lift that you're going to do, but you're going to come in 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after. You're going to do these drills, these technical drills, throwing the med balls, punching the med balls, moving in your stance with bands around your feet so that your abductors are working, and the specific things that you need to play football, the body positions you need to be in, you're actually working those. You're not just lifting to get big, lifting to get
Right.
stronger, lifting to get more massive. You are doing that, but you're also adding the technical component as well. And that's kind of where I, like, physically, mentally kind of started to take off in, like, my development of the game.
And then it
that's what-
became just a year-round thing for you.
yeah. So off-season training, it's not just lifting, it's both. It's before and after, or before or after. You're snapping the ball, you're taking sets, you're run blocking, and you're doing it, with your teammates so that you can hold the shield or throw med balls at each other. I think that's a really good way to develop, because it's not that there's something wrong with lifting and developing your strength and all that, because it is good for high school players to back squat and bench press and do everything. That is good, because you need that mass, you need that like raw strength to become a good football player. But there reaches a point where that's not enough.
So we had a guy years ago who coached our program, Benny Anderson, and he made a comment, and he said, looking at watching what we were doing skills training wise, and there's that application, because you run in between the strength conditioning component and then the skill development and then the team. So it's like that intermediary, right? And he said, looking back on my NFL career, he's like, I could lift weights in the off season. They would have, that would be a big deal back then, like lifting and getting stronger. He's like, but the problem is, let's just say you take a 16-game season. You're going to run into one guy. It does not matter what you do in the off season. He's going to be stronger than you. You're also going to run into another guy who, it doesn't matter what he does all off season. You're going to be stronger than him.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Those other 14 weeks, it's negligible, right? Everybody's the same. So the process then becomes who's more technical. And he said, if I would have spent more time on my skill sets, I think it could have got me a few extra years in the league. And so you look at it from that perspective, you don't never lose sight of the game you're playing, right? That is the story here, because yes, you can get big and strong, but once you get to a certain level, it's about being proficient at that skill set, right? And so the more proficiency you have in your skill sets, with your brain and your body being tied together, the easier the game becomes. And so that focus, and what people fail to really think about, is they transition so hard out of the season into this just lifting, and this is what we've always done. You should be working on your skill sets equally,
Yes.
because those skill sets are perishable and you do need them, and you're going to recall them fairly soon, once you get back into the practice mode. So I think there's a really tough, old school mindset with a lot of football coaches that they think you're going to work on football when you're in season and when we're drilling. But let's be truthful. In practice, in season is not the time to work on skills. That's the time to work on synchronizing with your offense, the choreography of the offense and defense. That's what that's about, right? And so those skill sets have to be there to support the scheme that you're playing in. So I think you bring up an excellent point with that, because it's not often that people really talk about like, hey, I really need to work on my functional side of my game as well. So so you have your season at Temple, you get the taste, it's fun. How's it go?
Yeah.
How's the season go?
Yeah. So I transferred to Temple in 2020 when the COVID stuff happened. So we only played a handful of games. And so I played at Temple for 20 and 21. So I spent an extra year with college, which was good for me in my development, like physically.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I noticed at Temple that really stood out, I was playing with way more talented guys, obviously, guys that were given scholarships right out of high school, guys that are more naturally gifted than I was. But one of the things that really started to stand out to me was guys who aren't coachable, guys that are so strong they can squat 650, but they can't stop a bull rush on the field. Guys who, get coached hard, get yelled at, and then they go in their shell and they pack it in, and the rest of their practice is terrible, or the rest of their game is terrible. That started to really stand out to me. At Dayton, that wasn't really so much the case that I'd seen. I think part of it may have been the non-scholarship factor. The game's kind of different at that level, because everyone, you're not required to be there.
You love it.
Yeah.
You have to love it, right?
The guys that stick around through their 4 years or even make it past their first year, they end up really liking football and really loving it and invested in getting better. But something that started to stand out to me at Temple was that some guys were just there. Like to be there because they were getting a scholarship. And I hadn't really seen that before, because if guys were like that, then they'd just leave. They'd give it up. So I actually kind of was able to kind of separate myself there, I think, a little bit, because I did like it. I did love it. I did put in the work. You know, I was able to translate from drills and technical to the field. And, you know, a lot of guys didn't really have that guidance, I don't think, and really love the game like that.
So the point is perfect, because there are so many guys that, you know, say you've been told you've been good since you've been a freshman. Like what are you going to tell me? That's what a lot of these guys aren't now. You know, you weren't it wasn't there yet, but now you start paying these guys on top of it. What are you going to tell them? They're making as much as some of the coaches. And so that becomes a real slippery slope. And, you know, and again, those guys can win in the short term, but that mindset will cap you off, not just in football, but in life in general, right? If you're not willing to be critiqued, you're not willing to be coached, why are you there, right? Because that's part of the game. Again, I'm not saying a coach can be unfair or whatever it might be, but the vast majority of those people are trying to get the best out of you so you can thrive, but they also can keep their job. So, you know, that's a really unique perspective, because you would assume all those guys have the passion and love it, but then you start to see, and it's all across the game of football. I mean, that's a very transactional, like, hey, I'm here. And then they think someone owes them because they've been, you know, they've been told all along they're really good. And then I think, you know, if those guys, if you really peel the onion back, are they really working that hard? I mean, the number of guys we've talked about, like, even that just go down to Mizzou, like local guys that go to Mizzou that, you know, a year or two from now that there's gone, right? And whatever happened to them? Well, you know that they weren't putting in the work, because you start to hear reports back that, hey, they're kind of lazy in practice. They don't like to be coached. You start hearing from their parents that the coach is a jerk. He's not this and that. And it's hard to transition out of that mindset of, oh, you're so great, we need you to be here. The coaches are calling you and texting you. And then you get there, and the you know, there becomes a wall between you and the coaches that you have to climb over to earn their trust and be the guy that they're going to put on the field. And I think that is really daunting for a lot of people, especially when you believe your stuff doesn't stink, you know, right? So as your second year at Temple, it comes to a wrap. Then it comes time to, you know, hey, am I going to get a job, or what am I going to do? Right.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that, because it wasn't, our Temple season didn't go very well. I think we won 3 games. The head coach ended up getting fired, Rod Carey. He was coach at NIU before he was coach at Temple, which, you know, they fire these coaches, but, you know, who knows? It's not always the coach's fault, you know.
No.
So there was like kind of upheaval in the program. There was a new head coach coming in, you know. But my offensive line coach at Temple, he did say to me, he said, "You were the best offensive lineman on our team. You know, you should give it a shot. They probably won't draft you, but you'll get a shot to do something. So you've done enough, you put enough on film. You may not get drafted. You may not fit the profile that a draft pick may be. You know, we didn't have great team success, so that might not be a huge thing in your favor, because the NFL is always looking for winners too.
Yep.
So that's not in your camp, but if you put the work into it, maybe you'll get a shot, maybe you won't, but like, you'll look back and you'll have no regrets. Like, you were the best offensive lineman on our team. If you don't give it a shot, you may always regret that. So
it sounds like there's key guys giving you advice over that time, right, that you listen to. But I think it's also important to note they're giving you that advice because they trusted you, and you did them right by them because you gave it your all. And I think that is important, because that coach is then going to put your name out there. He's willing to say to the scout, hey, you need to look at this guy. He's a worker. He's a guy. He's got all the attributes you'd want to see. So you come to the conclusion you're going to go give it a shot in the NFL. You end up back in St. Louis,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I found like a really great agent. And his deal was that he would pay for my training, but not for my housing or whatever, because there's different like tiers for the agents.
Yep.
Really what happens is the scouts talk to agents who they like, and then the agents kind of decipher that. And, then it's kind of like, oh, well, they really like this guy, so I'll offer this guy housing and, training and give him all that he wants, because he's going to be a draft pick or whatever. And then there's like different tiers. So for whatever reason, the agent that I met and really liked and thought was going to be a good person for me, he was going to pay for my training and not my housing. And I was like, well, to make this like more economical, I'll live at home. And I remember that elite place in the Valley. Like, I remember that being a really good place to be. I wonder if like I could do my combine training there. And so I remember being in Philly, calling up elite, and Nick answered.
Yep.
And then our relationship kind of grew from there. And I really think that was a good place for me to be, kind of be in the comfort of home. And then also training at, elite. And I think we had Connor train me.
Yep.
And I think that was just a really good position for me to be in.
Yeah. And then with Jacob Buffa wrote your program for lifting, you were coming off of shoulder issues. So like the bench press was a concern, but so you fast forward, you go through all your training. People don't realize you're training 2 times a day. You're running, you're lifting, all this stuff, but it's not more than what like a lot of places make it super fancy. At the end of the day, you got to be confident when you have your pro day, and you got to be feeling good physically. You don't want to get stripped down. And you want to run well when you go do your. So I remember when you getting ready to go for your pro day, and I don't remember exactly what the scores were, but you probably do. But I do know that like your scores, were at the point where it was like, oh boy, like he had a hell of a day. Like, so it was you went in weighing, you needed to weigh at least 300 pounds. So we took the kid that was 240. Pro day, what'd you weigh?
303.
303. And that's the magic number for you guys at home. Like if you can get like offensive line, they want them over 300 pounds. So you run your 40. What was that?
A good 303.
A good 303. Well, yeah. That's the thing is if you see Michael in the on the hoof, he does not look like 300 pounds. I mean, he is put together. And like you said, that low body fat, you still are. You're just very athletic, very lean. So what was your 40 time? Do you remember?
It was 5:01.
5:01 at 300 pounds.
I wanted to be under, but I just barely missed it.
Yeah.
But the big thing I think at that level is the splits, and my split was really good. 10-yard split, 20-yard split, 30-yard split, 40-yard split. They don't really look at the full 40-yard.
At 10-yard
split. At 10, baby.
Yep.
Yeah. How fast can you get out?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you remember what your 10 was?
It was 165 or something. In that
so that and just so you know, that equates like for like a guy that's like a position guy, 165. You're looking at like a really like a 175. 475 40. You add a tenth of a second to it, or 3.1 to it, and that gets you where you need to be for what your 40 time is off of that split. Bigger guys obviously slow down a little bit faster just because they're 300 pounds.
So yeah, I don't remember what the exact numbers were, but I was fast off the line and then kind of slowed down towards the end.
Yep.
Because I was bigger. And then, but to take a quick step backwards, there's a lot of people that like go away to train. Like, hey, I'm training for the combine. I have to go to Arizona, Texas, Florida, do whatever. That's fine, but that's good if it's like, all right, I'm gonna get out of my comfort zone and really lock in and like dial in and focus on training. But that's not all the case. Like whatever happened, doesn't always happen. So if you're gonna do that someday, if you're gonna train for the combine and the pro day, you go away, really make sure that you're in a good situation and you're not just going there to have fun or do whatever.
Recent a Mizzou guy, I'm not going to say the name, I was told that he went down to Florida. It was not very excited about what he received, and it was at one of the big name places too, and it just kind of felt like he was another number and not really a guy.
Went
where
to
they
one
were
of the factories.
yeah,
The
and so
football
they weren't
factory.
spending much
Right.
time with them. But I remember, so two key things stood out after your pro day. You start hearing from agents, from scouts. They're calling your agent, and then you'll hear just different things through the grapevine. But there's a thing called relative athletic score, RAS, and your relative athletic score, I believe, was placed you. So what they do is they have every person since 1983 that's done a pro day or the combine. They have them in this database, and so your scores placed you. Do you remember what the number was?
I don't remember, but it was
It
like
w-
the top percentage of whatever.
Top, let's just call it 20, 30 centers, offensive linemen, so centers, interior linemen, all time, out of like 800 people,
Just based
Right.
on like the pure scores,
pure
like
scores.
speed, agility, bench press,
Yep,
three
all of that.
cone, shuttle.
And they just accumulate all of that, and then they compare them against each other, and then also there's
Yeah.
like a component for height and weight. I mean, it's wild, but so that right there, and then some teams we were heard through the grapevine, like oh yeah, they have him rated. Like they start looking at, they have their own internal systems. They take those scores and do stuff with, but you start to get this the excitement about it. So draft day comes, what happens?
I really I'd received interest before, but the team that was interested in me that day was the Broncos. So I did an undrafted free agent deal there. And actually there was a lot of teams that were interested, but some teams wanted to have seen me snap the ball before, and I really had only played guard and tackle, so they didn't see
Yep.
that.
Yep.
But Denver was a team that was willing to take the chance on me and bring me in. So that's where I ended up signing.
And then that experience was good, but that was a little bit chaotic there too, because of what was going on with
Yeah.
the new coach and a lot of angst, if you will,
Yeah.
on that season.
There was a lot going on when I went out to Denver. That was Nathaniel Hackett's season, his first season. Russell Wilson got brought in, and there was tons of hype. People were talking Super Bowl, this and that and the other thing. And I got good reps. I thought I played well. I got to play in the preseason games, a lot of them for at least a half, which was really good tape to have out there. And like come the end of the preseason, what really had happened was they were looking for veterans. Guys had kind of been around the block because they were thinking Super Bowl. which
Little
kind of
did they know.
yeah. So for whatever reason, just didn't work out there. But really the biggest thing for the NFL, preseason for an undrafted guy or anyone who's trying to make a team is play.
Yep.
Play a lot so that everyone sees you. So I ended up being able to get a practice squad spot for the Chicago Bears my first season, kind of based on what I'd done in the preseason games, which was big.
And I don't think a lot of people realize there's scouts that scout the league themselves. There's internal pro scouts that are scouting the other team's rosters. And so if guys show up on someone's practice squad, they can pluck them off of there. That like there's all these different games that get played. But to make it on a practice squad is no easy feat, because there's so many guys coming in and out, and they're like, to your point, they're looking for guys that have experience, so that guy can bump people. Well, now you're a guy, you have 3 years of experience, you're heading into your third, so 2 full years of experience. So you're with the Bears through the finality of the season, right? Through that first year. Then what happens?
So for whatever reason, Chicago really wasn't a fit. They were kind of looking to really retool after that season. If you can remember, they had the first pick in the draft that year and then traded it away to Carolina and got a ton in return. But they really wanted to basically tear down and rebuild completely. So if you hadn't played and produced, you weren't going to be around anymore.
Yep.
So I had to find a new home, and I found it in Tampa Bay, actually. Because of what they'd saw in the preseason before, they were interested, but they didn't pull the trigger as fast as Chicago did the season before. So they wanted to take another look. So they had me in for a workout, actually. People probably don't even know that goes on, but when you're a free agent, they can bring you in for a 30-minute workout So I went down there for a 30-minute workout and then signed a contract after. And so I found another home there and another opportunity.
This is not for the faint of heart, right? I mean, as because what you're doing is you're getting in a position as a guy that's undrafted to put yourself in a position where eventually you find the right fit for you, right?
Mhm.
And especially in that system. So you go through camp, get lots of playing time. You're on
Yep.
TV, see you play a bunch. The preseason doesn't go your way, right? In the final cut.
Yep. So the way things actually work these days, there's no cuts.
Yeah. So.
The final cut's all the way at the end. But really, I played left guard for the first game. There's 3 preseason games. I played left guard in the first, right guard in the second, and center in the third. So I had versatility at all positions. But the biggest thing was that I'd never played center in a game before. So snapping is really valuable in the NFL because not everyone can do it. So to be on the field and get that experience was huge for me and my development, and for, interest around the league. There was, again, you never know quite what goes into those preseason, selections, but they didn't hang on to me in Tampa Bay, but because I'd shown the versatility and put the film out there were still other people interested.
Well, yeah, and there's politics in that with who they bring in as other undrafted free agents or who they draft or what money they have tied up in people that is like well beyond the normal scope of like a fan's understanding. Like they just see the end result, but there's a lot more to. It's not that you can't play; it's that hey, we don't have room right now.
Yeah.
Right. And oh, by the way, if we get room, we're going to bring you right back.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then what happens is if another team acknowledges the same thing that team is, they snatch you up. So you end up in Detroit. Right.
Yeah.
And
so
fun place
from Tampa to Detroit. One of the lessons that really stood out to me was playing center. You have to be a great leader, especially in the NFL. There's so much going on. There's so many defenses that can be thrown at you. There's so many plays in the playbook. You got to be a good leader. You got to be decisive and quick on your feet on the field, especially so that things can run smoothly. And not that I didn't do that a great job, but you can always improve at that. And coming to play center so late, in my career, learning it in the NFL, that's probably one of the greatest lessons I could tell anybody is be a great leader if you got the ball in your hands at center. So that was my biggest takeaway kind of from my Tampa experience, was be assertive, be a great leader. Cause I'd never been in that position before, to really run the show on offense like that. So then from Tampa to Detroit, there's no rest for the wicked because it freaking the preseason ends and then, week 1's a week later. You got to be ready to go for that. So that was kind of an insight that kind of stuck with me from Tampa. That was kind of something I learned from the coach there.
So the transition from one team, and every NFL team has its own identity too. So you go from Tampa, Florida, and you go to this gritty, Detroit team with the head coach that is fiery, and we've all seen him on Hard Knocks. I mean, Coach Campbell is just a guy seems like you'd want to play for, right?
Yeah.
The staff that they've assembled is top notch.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see the results this year. So how was the transition to Detroit?
It was hard at first. Any transition in, I don't like being the new guy per se. And I had to do it 4 times in 2 years. So I feel it's always tough to be the new kid on the block. Hey, I'm Michael. Introduce yourself all the time, be in an unfamiliar place. So anytime I feel you have to do that and do it at an NFL level was always tough. But the transition to Detroit was, I thought, really awesome. It was unlike kind of any other NFL experience I'd been around because there were so many former players on the coaching staff. Normally NFL players retire and they want to go home and be with their families and stuff like that. But Coach Campbell has such a good, culture in Detroit that a lot of players come out of their retirement and, they don't have to coach if they don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
but they want to be there. And there is a really good culture there, like whatever it takes to get it done kind of mindset, from coaches and players, top down. And that starts with Coach Campbell, but it was a good fit. From the day I got there, I was the second team center. So I was taking all the scout team reps, which was awesome. And it was really kind of sink or swim. I mean, that's kind of how it is everywhere in the NFL, but come into a new place week one, it's sink or swim.
Yeah.
They'll get rid of you if you sink.
Yeah,
So
they
you
don't
have to worry
care
about
less.
that.
They
but-
can go find somebody else.
yeah, but it was good. It was a good transition, and the guys there were like cooler. Some of the coolest guys I'd been around were there in Detroit, and very welcoming, and like understood that it takes more than the 5 starters and the guys on active roster, and they kind of made me feel like family. So that was awesome.
That's awesome. So you guys came up a little short, gut wrenching at the end of the season, but one hell of a season that I know that the city of Detroit probably won't forget for some time. And I'm sure that the anticipation and pressure for this season is going to be really intense because they're going to want to repeat, right? If not, go further. So,
Right.
What are you doing right now for as we start kind of close this up? What are you doing as you've made your journey, right? So now you're still living in it, right? All that other stuff's in the past. So what have you learned, and what are you doing now this off season? And you've kind of touched on some of it, but like, what are some of the things you do on a daily basis as an NFL lineman in the off season before you transition back to OTAs and all your team activities?
Yeah, that's a really open-ended question. There's a lot there. The season is so long because it starts next Monday and it goes through February if you're lucky to make it that far. So this time of the year, it's kind of like a get back to neutral, kind of get back to the basics sort of time frame. I think it's a time you really lock in on like your diet, nutrition, and your sleep, as well as continuing to work out and progress in that way. But I really lock in on my nutrition, making sure I'm eating the right things, 32 grams of protein, 40 grams carbs every 3-4 hours, doing the right things for my body to make sure that I feel 100% better from February until April. Because that's the only time you get to rest, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say like I'm going in the weight room like back squatting 500 pounds all the time. It's not really that sort of deal. Like we'll get into that as the OTAs come along and you're with the team, but this is kind of like your personal time to do what you need. And as you're a professional, you can do what you want. No one's going to babysit you and hold your hand. So I do like lift Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I would say hour or so at a time. Kind of the groove I've been in has been Monday and Friday at Elite, and then Tuesday and Thursday at First Form, lifting, and then probably 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after. I've taken that with me to do position work.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see me at Elite on Tuesday or Thursday afternoon, or Elite on Monday or Friday, I'm snapping the ball in the net. I'm doing all that. I'm still like focused on football and keeping that, because if you don't, you'll lose it.
It's
So
over.
the only way to get better at football is by playing football. So
Yes.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, any as we get out of here, any parting thoughts you want to share with players or parents about your journey and their own personal developments?
yeah, there's so much noise out there. There's Twitters and Instagrams and like, look at me, I got offered from here. Look at this one-handed catch. But I would say just like trust that you're doing the right things. Like time will tell. If you're doing the right things, there will be results. And not everyone's going to be a professional athlete, but like there's so many lessons that you can learn along the way through high school or college football, like that you'll take with you for the rest of your life. Just block out the noise. There's so much BS out there, like through the internet, through anything else. be true to yourself and, take it for what it is. The game will give you so much. If you give to the game of football, it will give back to you more than you give it, in terms of like lessons and, friendships and everything else. So kind of block out the noise. Remember that, because that's so important.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like with all the other high level athletes that we've talked to, it's mindset and perseverance. Stick to it, what you're supposed to, and things pay off. Where can people reach you at? Where can they follow you?
I have an Instagram account at Bees Niece, and a Twitter, but I wouldn't say I'm super active on it, but I do post occasionally. So I'm trying to be more active this year. So
There you go. So now
we'll keep everybody up to date on
Yeah.
your journey as well.
yeah, it's a fascinating story, and I appreciate you
Awesome.
sharing it with us.
Absolutely.
And so I'm
Thanks
sure
for having
more
me.
people are going to want to follow you. And
Yeah, we
Follow that
talked about
journey.
this. We wanted to get you in here because like your story is not traditional, but it is so dead on with if you're doing the right things, you keep an open mind, you don't let yourself quit when you should, right? When you think
Yep.
when it's easy to quit, you keep pushing and persevering. You could end up in the NFL.
Yeah.
Good things.
Persevere.
Good things happen,
will
right? And you
Right,
don't force it. And that's what I love about your story is it's true, it's pure, and it's still evolving.
Yep.
So best of luck to you this
Yeah.
off this coming season.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for joining us and taking the time out. You want to be the next Michael Neese, KCVarsityCombines.com. That'll do it for this week. Matt Bierman over there. Where can people follow you?
Elite Football on X and Elite Football Academy on Instagram.
That'll do it. Everybody stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.